Welcome to the YourTown television program. My name's Jeff Kline, and I'm your host for this MPS segment, foundation segment that brings you interesting faculty and students from the Naval Postgraduate School and what they're doing around our local community. For this segment, we have Commander Bill Hatch, United States Navy retired, and senior lecturer in the Graduate School of Business and Public Policy. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here, Jeff.
Now, before we start talking about what you do at MPS or the local community, we always like to find out a little bit more about you and your history. And particularly when I have retired naval officers, or any officer actually, I like to dwell on that because maybe some young person will see this show and decide, yeah, maybe I should try the Navy. Well, let's start off with, you did your undergraduate degree in San Jose State University. Are you a California native, born and raised?
You would think I would be, but I'm not.
Oh, well,
my mother, father, and sister are California-born natives.
Okay.
But because my father was in the Air Force, we were actually living in Portland, Oregon. So I was born in Vancouver, across the river from Portland.
And you followed your father all over the place.
We went from there to Griffith Air Force Base in New York. He was flying KC-135s.
Oh. Did you have any overseas tours as a kid?
Not as a kid.
Okay.
And then we came back and retired at Castle.
So, but how did you end up at San Jose State? What attracted you to that then?
After my dad retired, he worked for Lockheed, and we were there at Moffett Field and Enville Air Station.
Oh, sure. So you were near the area.
Right. Yeah. So I was kind of raised on Moffett Field in the sense that, you know, a kid with a dependent ID card.
So you yeah, you could go up and visit it periodically and see the old hometown and that sort of thing.
That's right.
Although they change the hangars quite a bit now into different things, right?
Hangar 1 is stripped down to bare metal.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. And then I was essentially raised in Sunnyvale.
Oh, okay.
And that was, you know, our home of choice after leaving Atwater.
So your dad's in the Air Force. What inspired you to join the Navy?
So my dad was not only in the Air Force, he was also in the Navy.
Oh, was he really? Okay, so he did one service and the other?
He enlisted in the Navy in 1935.
Wow.
And was sent to the Yangtze River.
So he was on the Yangtze River in the late 30s.
Right. So he was on a boat, he was a yeoman.
Right.
And then did his time. In fact, he was too young to sign up. His father had to sign him up. And he went out there, came back, got out, the war came along, and he joined the Army Air Corps.
Oh, wow.
And so he wound up as a B-17 instructor out of Greenwood, Mississippi.
So did he fly in the Pacific or the European theater?
So that's a good question. I would say he mostly flew in the European theater.
Right, okay.
Because when the war came by, he got riffed.
Uh-huh.
And worked in San Francisco for JROTC at the high school.
Oh, great.
In San Francisco. And then he went out as a tech sergeant, even though they made him a tech sergeant because of the riff. They brought him back in as a major, and he went to Germany as provost marshal in Wiesbaden.
That's the craziness that's associated with the war and immediate post-war years.
He flew DC-3s.
They were looking for people to fit the jobs we needed them to fill.
So he flew DC-3s, and he was the private pilot for Ariel Harriman, who was the ambassador to Russia.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now this goes back to you with that interesting career experience that your dad had in different areas. Why did he advise you to join the Navy?
Well, he didn't really advise me. I think I made that choice on my own because I thought I could travel and do more things in the Navy than perhaps the Air Force. And
that was exactly my decision.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and that worked out quite well.
Wonderful.
And so it chose that.
So did you go through an ROTC program at San Jose State, or did you join OCS, Officer Candidate School, or how did you?
Good question. So I originally went to De Anza Junior College, got my Associate of Arts, and then transferred to San Jose State.
All right.
And all they had was Army and Air Force ROTC.
Oh, all right.
So I investigated and found that Cal Berkeley had Navy ROTC.
So you were associated with that ROTC while you went to San Jose State.
Correct. So
That's not uncommon.
I commuted back and forth, 3 or 4 days a week on BART to get to the campus and then come back and take classes at San Jose State at night.
And what did you find your undergraduate degree in?
It's industrial arts with a teaching credential.
Right. So you're actually teaching industrial arts and that capability.
I was teaching, so for my student teaching, I was teaching at Silver Creek High School, Yerba Buena High School, and I was teaching auto shop and metal shop.
Wow, great.
So
providing real skills to people.
Exactly.
Yes,
all practical, hands-on.
Yeah,
if it hadn't been for that, I may not have gone to college because that's what interests me.
high school, I did very well in those things.
So you graduated, you got a commission. What did you do initially in the Navy then?
Well, a little bit of a fallen angel.
Okay. So you went to flight school.
I went to flight school.
Okay.
So
some of our best surface guys went to flight school.
So I went to Pensacola, then to Corpus Christi, flying
Right.
in VT-27, and then the decision was made that flying may not be for me.
Right.
And then I attended surface warfare school in San Diego
the-
on Coronado Island.
We don't have that anymore, but
That's
you're
right.
right. Yeah, you're talking a little history.
That's a little bit of history.
Yeah.
And then leaving there, my first tour was in Hawaii.
Well, that's not bad.
Not
What
too
did you
bad.
serve in Hawaii?
So I served on the USS Bruton, which is a Knox class frigate,
Right.
and I was a damage control assistant.
Oh, that's not an easy job.
Yeah, and in fact, when I graduated from SWAS in San Diego, one of the first things the guy that handed out assignments said, "Who did you tick off?"
To be a damage control assistant on a Knox class frigate. That's where those industrial art skills came in.
It actually did.
I know it did.
Because when my guys couldn't weld or braze something,
That's
I'd get
right. You
underneath
could do
there.
it.
I did it, and so the captain nicknamed me Hands On.
No, that's a great nickname for you, to get it done.
Yeah.
So what did you do after that? What was your tour
So I
after
left
that?
the Bruton, and I did a second sea tour,
Yeah.
a division officer sea tour, and I went to the USS Warden, which is a Leahy class, and
Well, which is a cruiser, an older steam cruiser.
correct.
Right.
And I was a fire control officer.
Well, now what does a fire control officer do?
So we were in charge of
We don't control the fires.
yeah, that's right. The fire control radars
All right.
that go up while a missile's been launched in flight.
Right.
And you're kind of the senior lifted the pickle puller
Right.
for launching
The missiles. in
thin
defense.
Terrier BTNs or Terrier SM2s.
Well, I was going to say, those are old names for our current missiles now. Some of the first
much.
ones. Well, the Leahy class and her sisters actually brought in much of our air defense capabilities that we had in those days.
They were the backfire bear
Right.
options kind of.
Type thing that we had. So where was Leahy home ported then?
Hawaii.
Oh, Hawaii. So
Yeah.
you had a longer tour in Hawaii. That's
Right.
great.
So I spent about almost 6 years in Hawaii in totality.
Well, maybe, but you deployed frequently.
Yes, we
And
deployed. In those days, we really didn't deploy to the Persian Gulf. We deployed to the IO,
Right, Indian Ocean. Right.
and we actually did one tour with Carl Vincent, and they were just talking about this the other day, where we were so far north initially. We were with Carl Vincent, and Carl Vincent had snow on the flight deck.
Oh, Carl Vincent's, of course, our carrier.
Carrier.
Yeah, yeah. And,
And
she had snow on the flight
And
deck.
she had snow
Wow.
on the flight deck. None of the heating worked on the ship as it had never been used as we were from Hawaii. And so my guys were busy.
That was experience.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
exactly right.
And then we moved off to Vladivostok, where we stayed there for a while and patrolled for submarines, Soviet submarines coming out of Vladivostok. Then we moved down to the Red Sea, where it comes out into the IO, and monitored the patrols
Trolls
down there.
coming out of there.
Yep.
And that was, and still is not uncommon in many cases when you
Yeah.
go on a 6-month deployment. You don't go to just one spot. You cover half the world in most cases
Yeah,
in different
absolutely.
assignments.
Oh,
So those were your division officer tours, your department head tours then, next
so-
senior step?
yeah. So the next step was department head tour, and I wound up chief engineer. And again, really good because all the practical skills I knew from my
Sure.
undergraduate, I could apply to
That's
it.
right.
And I went out to Yokosuka, Japan,
On which ship?
on the USS Hewitt,
Okay.
a Spruance class destroyer,
Right.
and met the ship about a month before deployment. We immediately got underway and went to the Persian Gulf.
Oh, there you go. So that was a swing around to the Persian
Right,
Gulf.
right.
And then you stayed in Japan after that tour?
After that tour, I chose to stay in Japan. I initially chose to be the logistics N4 guy that tracked parts and readiness officer because Desron 15 was a Attacker-on.
So that's the destroyer squadron.
Correct.
Group.
We had 3 Spruance class destroyers and 4 frigates in the squadron.
Right.
And we got them ready for what used to be called Operational Propulsion Plan Examination, now called Engineering Cert.
Right.
And then I had an opportunity where the chief staff officer had to leave, and we had nobody. And so the Commodore.
You got to fill both as a chief staff officer.
Yeah, so Commodore
also not a frequent thing that happens.
Correct. So someone got relieved.
Right.
And the chief staff officer went out. I became chief staff officer for the last half of my tour.
Yeah. Which gave you a little bit broader look.
Absolutely. But we mostly rode the USS Independence, the carrier, as the staff.
Right. Right.
So it was interesting. It was
So
really
you
good.
got carrier time and that sort of thing.
That's correct.
So when did you come to MPS in your career to get a graduate degree?
Actually, between my division officer tour and my department head tour.
And what did you study?
Back then it was called Manpower Personnel Training Analysis. Today the program would be called Manpower Systems Analysis.
So again, you're studying actually the manpower or personnel capabilities of human resources for the Navy and that sort of thing. And you go ahead.
It's kind of hard to explain. If someone asks you, what do you do? And you say, you can't really say manpower systems analysis. The civilian person doesn't get that.
That's
so
right.
you say, I do military human resource management. And then they kind of get it.
Well, you do, but you do even more than that in a way, in the sense that, well, let's take an example of, and I'm jumping around here, but your recent research topics and how many people does it take to resource an unmanned vehicle squadron, for example. So you're not just more in human resources, you're also in the establishment of policy of manpower policies, what keeps people in, what state gives them out, all sorts of interesting topics. So what did you do your thesis in?
My thesis was on physical readiness testing among surface warfare officers.
So a physical readiness test has to occur every year.
Right.
So what was that focus on? What did you
it was on what exercises that we have as part of the PRT. Because regardless of who you are, officer or enlisted, you have the same physical fitness test.
Right.
And my observation was guys were stopping halfway through the run, having a cigarette, and then keep on going. So
something was wrong with the test?
But we specifically looked at officers. What do officers need to do in order to be fit at sea?
Wow.
And so what we really found was, because you don't run on board ship necessarily.
Right. You don't get a chance to
but
on
when you
smaller
really,
ships. That's
yeah.
right.
But when you're in a trainer, like a damage control trainer,
Right.
I went to one in Treasure Island. The water was ice cold, and to work on a broken pipe and water coming down on you for 45 to 50 minutes while you're trying to fix things, really takes some endurance.
And it takes upper body strength.
Yeah,
Yep.
it does.
Oh, absolutely.
Your arms are up, and so our findings, our recommendations were to increase the run to 3 miles by a mile and a half, because you don't have any cardiovascular really in a mile and a half.
Yeah, you must have been very popular.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was fun. So after you graduated there, you went to your department head tours.
Right.
You filled in for the chief of staff at Desron 15.
Right.
And then where did you roll?
Then I rolled to Tennessee, where I thought I was going to buy a log home and live in the mountains.
You went to Tennessee because that's where our manpower center is. So we
That's
started leveraging your education.
We were the first command from the naval staff in D.C. to go to Millington.
Right.
And because Naval Personnel Command wasn't there yet. So that was my obligated tour payback for NPS.
Right.
And I was the Deputy Director of Surface Warfare Requirements.
So you actually helped shape the personnel requirements associated with manning our ships at sea.
I had about 50 E7s and above, and about 25 civilians, and about 3 officers working for me. And we would go out in teams to the fleet and look at a West Coast and East Coast destroyer, because they don't operate necessarily exactly the same.
No, they don't.
And so then we satisficed
what we needed to. Right.
Exactly right. So,
well, that's fantastic. And now, just for time, when did you come to Monterey as a military faculty?
At the end of my tour at NAVMAC, because I had been asked to come out and do a brief on manpower.
Right.
And so I thought, hey, it's not far from Sunnyvale, where I grew up.
It's a good idea.
And I knew about Monterey, so let's give this a shot afterwards.
Sure. So this was in '98, is that right?
1998.
Yeah. And then you were here as a military faculty. You started participating in teaching and shaping the manpower systems, and then you stayed. What made you decide to transition to a civilian faculty?
Because I'd always wanted to teach.
Oh, okay.
So I may not have mentioned earlier, but the degree in industrial arts came with a preliminary teaching credential.
Right, you did. You said that. So you're in a way to effectively.
So now this is what I figured out what I was good at, or thought I was good at, in the world of manpower, and it was an opportunity to teach and stay in this area.
Now, in addition to manpower, you were also involved with standing up and working to make our executive MBA, a distance learning program, which is wildly successful, work as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that originally started with Commander Naval Air Forces, Vice Admiral Zortman. Had a need for aviators to get a graduate degree, but they couldn't afford to take them out of operational billets.
Right. They had to stay where they were at, either teaching other pilots to fly or actually flying.
Right. And the proof of that was that lieutenant commanders were not getting promoted because they stepped out of the operational cockpit.
Right.
So we went to many of the fleet replacement squadrons and got pilots from there, and we brought the train to them through video teleconferencing.
Great.
So faculties at Monterey, they stay there, they work as a team, and then that team does a project for somebody on the base.
So this is their graduation project because
Their
it's
capstone, right.
MBA is a professional degree.
Correct.
So you're actually demonstrating the fact you can do what you learned in the classroom as part of your
And it creates networking.
Oh yeah,
you know,
no,
to
absolutely.
stay in touch with. And
so now you also bring these students back periodically to MPS, is that right?
well, we brought them for a week at the beginning,
Right.
and gave them a team building course.
Okay.
Because they're going to operate as a team and communicate together
Right.
as a team.
Right.
And if they have issues, they have to use those skills in order to get along, so to speak, because they are personalities.
So it is a distance learning course, but they come back periodically. I mean, do they come back?
They came back twice.
Twice.
For orientation
Right.
and then for graduation.
For graduation,
Yeah.
great. So they get a chance to sit down and talk to the faculty and that sort of
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we would have a mixer when they first got there, and the faculty would come and talk to them. They'd talk, and so you really did know the students.
Now this, you started out focusing specifically on aviators in the Navy, but this program has grown much broader than that, hasn't it?
Yeah, one of our prior deans at the Graduate School of Business and Public Policy went under the Bush administration to be financial management and budget at FMD,
Right.
and he wanted to develop his civilian workforce.
Ah, so this was a good way in order.
This was his way of developing the civilian workforce, and so they were on the EMBA program as well, under a different funding model, but essentially took the exact same courses.
So tell us some of the resident courses you teach here. What are those like?
Well, there is a human resource management course.
Okay.
So my job is to take this civilian book, which is very good, and then show the application in the Navy or in any military service.
Right.
Marine,
How to
Marine
take
Corps,
those
Navy.
lessons and apply it to
Right.
the military
Right.
organization.
You know,
Great.
what does this do? What's the equivalent of this in the military?
Right.
And then I have an orientation course, because when I was here as a student at NPS, I felt as though there was an expectation.
And you didn't know what that expectation
Yeah,
was because nobody told you what it was.
Yeah. So I
know
thought,
what you're talking about.
I need to bring back
Right.
what I didn't think I got as far as practical experience. So that's always been my goal, is to make them understand early in the program why it's important for them to do well.
Well, Bill, sometime we're going to have to, we're running out of time, but sometime we're going to have you back on the show to talk about some of the things you influenced, the surface warfare officer community, the unmanned systems community, as I referred to before, your research associated with going overseas and teaching in overseas were all important aspects. But one last question, what do you enjoy most about living in the Monterey County area? What activities do you like outside of school?
Well, I'm a part of the Big Sur Marathon Foundation.
Oh, great. So you help put the Big Sur on.
I run all the support and gear wagons. Some people call it the meat wagon. When someone can't complete, we drive them to the finish line.
That would be after 2 miles from here.
Yeah. And that's beautiful, and it's a great bunch of people. A lot of people from the Naval Postgraduate School, among others. And you can go any direction and be someplace.
That's here. That's
Yeah.
right. That's
It's
right.
not that far to drive to the Sierras for snow. If you care to go to San Francisco, you can go up there. You can go south of Pismo Beach, or you can enjoy your own beach right here in Monterey.
That's right. Well, Bill, thank you very much for your past service and your service at MPS to shape the future of our students. And thank you for being on the YourTown television program today.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining us for this segment of the YourTown television program sponsored by the MPS Foundation. Join us again in the future to hear about interesting things we're doing, our faculty and our students in the local area.